So the problem with the G920 shifter is it's very loose. It's not a very tight or notchy shifter, and especially once you chuck on a different shift knob and all that extra weight on the top really makes it very weak. Like I barely flicked that. Things you'll need. You need a screwdriver and some Allen keys. I have no idea which size yet, but it looks like 3mm or a 2.5mm Allen key. And then a rag to kind of clean up all the junk that you might have inside there. And some grease to re-grease the little pin that's in there as well. So I would assume you guys still have your original shift boot on your shifter. So that's where you need your Allen keys. I've still got a couple of the screws in there somehow. Not sure why the screws are on there and the shift boot isn't. But I'm going to chuck the camera down here, get a close up. Much easier for you guys to see as well. I'm going to need some kind of spanner as well. But that one's fallen off already, so we don't need it for that one. Alright, let's try and grip this thing so we can undo it. We got a little 10mm nut on here, if anyone's wondering which one it is. Before you go and do this job, I would highly recommend making sure you get yourself a screwdriver that's got a magnetic tip, because that will make life so much easier putting this back together, particularly those ones that are going to be sitting down in there. Okay, last couple of screws we've got hiding are down in here, here, and here. Okay, now that we've got our shifter mechanism exposed, we've got to take out these 3 screws, and then this thing will lift out. Do it very carefully because it's got a little spring load on the bottom. We don't want to be losing that anywhere. Alright, this lifts straight out like that. So the spring you want to be careful of is down the bottom. You don't want to lose this one here. And then I've already dropped the ball from it. So that little metal ball just fell out because that ball sits on top of that spring there. So instead of a spring, it's going to be a solid piece. I think it's 3D printed. I still have to open the actual letter, but we're going to pull this out. Give all this a little wipe down. So spoiler alert, wasn't really a fan of the feel of it, and it turns it very clunky. So it's these 3 little holes here, that's what the ball moves between. And when the spring's in there, that ball can compress in that little bit, so it actually moves in between them. But when you have a solid block in there, that's where it gets that real it's very clunky, and I'm not a fan of that feeling. I've actually got a bolt, I think it's from an RC car. So it's a little Allen key bolt here. Whoa, don't know if the camera's gonna end up focusing on it. But I've pretty much got this bolt here, and it's got a kind of a pretty thick head. And it's just small enough as well that it'll fit into that sleeve of the shifter. And I'm hoping that the spacing on this head as well will act like a little kind of preload on the spring. And this spring just fits over the threads on this as well. So we're going to put this together, slip it back in, put it all back together, and hopefully we have a slightly stiffer feel without it feeling too clunky like the solid piece did. So this feels so much better than having that 3D printed piece in there, because when that was in there, it couldn't compress at all on that ball. So it was just, even though it was stiff, it wasn't enjoyable. That could also be a personal preference kind of thing, but just putting a little more resistance on that spring, or putting a bit more preload on it, that alone has just changed it so much more. And it doesn't flick so easily out of gear. And all that extra weight on the top really makes it very weak. Like I barely flicked that. So before, I'd do that and it would go straight up and down with ease. Now, a little bit stiffer, and should hopefully make shifting that little bit more enjoyable on here as well.